Good morning. I'm Christine Lai from Hong Kong. Thank you for this session. As Andrew just mentioned, we need spiritual power. So this presentation really most probably have changed a little bit of focus because of also my research in the last 7-8 years, as well as the interest towards a new paradigm of economics. But I would like to share an idea about from a spirituality of aging and human flourishing perspective. Okay. The reality we are facing in the global aging world, you can see all the statistics, but particularly Hong Kong, right now above 65, 32% rise by 2/4:1. The median age rate rise 51.8%. So today, we have 125 million aged 80 years or older. In 2050, 434 million worldwide. And 80% of the older people will live in the lower middle income countries. So, and the reality also, COVID-19 also shifts our focus. We may reflect some questions. Does pursuing common good mean extending restrictions in attempt to extinguish, not merely contain the virus? Does it mean giving priority to getting the economy going again? What sort of society do we want to live in? What are our rights and responsibilities as citizens? But how about our aging and older age group facing this? Of course, there are threats because of the aging population, the COVID, threats to economics and the world, because our old paradigm will think aging and old age equals to fragility, suffering, despair, etc. And it will impose economic pressure, healthcare pressure, moral and social issues, as well as existential issues. But can we have a new paradigm to see aging and old age group? And I like to see human flourishing. What does it mean? Human flourishing represents a state of mental health in which an individual is actively striving to live well, rather than merely feeling good. Flourishing, older adults exhibit sense of personal growth. Most of the research are focusing human flourishing on positive outcomes for mental and physical health. But can we look at spiritual beyond physical? In this September, Oxford McDonald Center of Theology, Ethics, and Public Health hosted a virtual conference on aging and despair towards the protection of health and hope. Theologians, philosophers, medical professionals, healthcare, bioethics, or interdisciplinary people come together to discuss, and their subjective experiences of suffering and despair, threats of death and dying. What are the insights? Virtues for overcoming despair and meaning, practices of hope. And there are also reflections on the ars moriendi, the art of dying. For resourcing healthcare, we examine public policies, educative experience, and professional practice. And in that virtual conference, I gave a presentation on spirituality of aging and integral human development intercultural dimension, which is a beginning of my current research. Because aging is a process. It's not suddenly we aged. It's a process of experiencing the whole life, ups and downs. We need to connect back to the whole life. But can we find a source of power and empowerment from the meaning and interpretation of life so that we can generate hope? So the new way of connecting life, I propose, through these 3 important elements: spirituality of aging, the papal teaching of integral human development, and intercultural dimension. I'd like to share some of the efforts in the last 7 years. In my just finished last year professional doctor of practical theology in Cambridge, I studied the midlife transformation practice of Christian professionals in Hong Kong, evolving a spiritual practice by using Ignatian spirituality and Buddhist mindfulness. There are results I will share later. The Cambridge MBIT newsletter, I share about the ultimate meanings of life in the days of pandemics, especially from midlife to aging. In the MBIT and Yuan Dao Study Society, Hong Kong Yuan Dao Society, we organized just also September, In Search of Meaning and Fulfillment through Interreligious Dialogue. It's about more intercultural dimension, Vatican II, Pope Francis and beyond. in the Oxford Conference, just mentioned, Aging Despair Conference. And my current research at Margaret Beaufort Institute of Theology, Cambridge, and Hong Kong Bioethics Center is about spirituality of integral human development for aging. And what are the results? What were the results in my midlife Christian professional Hong Kong? I found 3 key themes: connectedness, discernment, and transformation through 6 qualitative interviews, 6 midlife Christian executives going through 8 weeks of spiritual practice model. In the spirituality of aging, I particularly right now trying to define it as ultimate meaning of life, transcendence, intimacy with God and others, and from fear to hope. And integral human development gave me very important concept about everything is connected. I'll explain later. And the intercultural dimension from the Western Catholic social teaching to the Eastern and Chinese cultural wisdom traditions, Buddhism and Confucianism. This is my model. Left-hand side, integral human development, spirituality of aging, and an intercultural approach. And the new paradigm of aging, Pope Francis concerns the marginalized and the weakest. Aging groups definitely is the most vulnerable. But also in a society, we look at the aging group as declining value to productivity and economics. But the mission of Pope Francis is a vision of hope for the entire human family, including aging group. So the new paradigm of aging I propose can be a sustainable resource to the economics and growth in a multicultural global world. And how about ecological conversion that Pope Francis mentioned, and spirituality? What's the relationship? It cannot be this ecological conversion cannot be sustained only by doctrine alone. Spirituality is capable of inspiring us as an interior impulse, encourages, motivates, nourishes, and gives meaning to our individual life and communal activity. In the Laudato Si 151, and also external deserts in the world are growing because the internal deserts have become so vast. So to achieve such reconciliation, we need to examine our lives and a change of heart. And ecological conversion also talk about relationship, living our vocation, and with our Christian experience. So this awareness from within is very important to conscious of the bonds of all beings. So from the perspective of solidarity and everything is connected, Pope Francis' spirituality is what is needed to shape, motivate, educate for changes in order for us to sustainably live within our common home. This awareness is so important, while this conversion that Pope Francis stresses, everything is interconnected. And what does it mean? That I put in my research, solidarity with future generations. So these 3, I like to propose 3 key ideas: spirituality of aging, integral human development, and intercultural dimension. This is, of course, spirituality is very vast kind of definition. But I'd like to propose this as an existential construct of spirituality and personal meaning, transcending old age, and is also individual source of spirituality, so that they can have provide a meaningful interpretation of lives. There are, of course, different psychological, pastoral counseling definition of spirituality of aging, about harmony, relationship. But in particular, McKinney, a pastoral theologian and also was a nurse, she developed a model about a response to ultimate meaning of life and defined the spiritual dimensions of life as ultimate meaning of life: self-transcendence, intimacy with God, and hope. John Cottingham talking about it's a process of finding identity, it's a whole lifetime and full integration, while Jesuits Gerard Tates talking, of course, finding God in all things, including in fragility, hopelessness, especially experience of old age. The second concept, key idea I like to propose is the integral human development can help us to have some new insight. The Pope Francis and also Vatican papal teaching of integral human development is a new advocacy. Cardinal Turkson is the director of dicastery promoting integral human development, enlighten us the importance of later life searching for an integral life. The Catholic social teaching in IHD in the short term is the last 3 decades, Pope Paul VI, Pope Benedict, and Pope Francis in their encyclical. And Cardinal Turkson mentioned we are lost in this world. We're living in this world, emphasizing growth, productivity outcome, human being becomes the tools to fulfill these capitalistic values. We are lost in this material world. But then the integral human development may provide us some dimension to look at. We integrate different dimensions, earlier, speaker mentioned about everything is connected, theological, philosophical, social, psychological, economical. So this whole development, put it in the human person, covering all aspects of life. Our life involves social, economic, political, cultural, personal, and spiritual. So integral, I believe, is the key to the concept. And also when we can appreciate the process of aging and development in the later stage of life. Pope Francis also mentioned that elderly is a bearers of memory, witness to the culture of society. And Turkson talked about at later life, we experience all things, but we're still longing for an integral life which can bring us spirit and joy in the process of progress, development, and maturity. So if integral human development and aging combined together, then there are a few ideas that we can elaborate from it. It's a becoming process. If God wants us to experience all things, including sufferings, of course, evils, is a reality to experience. But then Pope Francis, that this is a process, work of creation. When Laudato Si talking about very important focus, everything is connected. It leads to a fundamental question for the modern societies, our economies, politics, and the ways of living. The concept of integral ecology is a self-concept, self-identity relationships with self and God. So through the lens of IHD, to reflect on aging, we need to reflect about the meaning of life, interconnectedness with all living things, and awareness of the transcendent dimension of being. In the quality of life, Christian spirituality important is for a prophetic contemplative lifestyle and understanding of quality of life. So it correlates integral progress, above all improvement in quality of life in the Laudato Si 46. So quality of life includes health, viable social relationships, particularly within families. Integral whole, only humanity can achieve wholeness with purpose. The integral development, human finds the right balance between components of life, among components of life, horizontal and vertical growth. So this integral whole is the evolution of divine creation. Human grows into the perfection of God. So with this, I'd like to propose the third key idea. As a Hong Kong Chinese Christian, born Catholic, affected by Chinese traditions, I'd like to propose this important, with a rich, complex dimension of intercultural dimension of IHD, interpreted in Chinese cultural tradition. But this idea also influenced by my aging mother. She was 98 last year, back to heaven. But she was the first Catholic raised up in Confucianism and Buddhism family. But with her daily prayers, filial piety as a first Catholic, her Christian faith and Chinese values has empowered her to find meaning, overcome challenges. As a widow for 50 years, 6 siblings, physical decline, especially last 5 years, last 20 years, taking care of her, seeing her decline. But her faith and Chinese values has transcended her. So she has transcendence from the family, intergenerational suffering to the love of children. This is what she was in 96 facing the beach. She mentioned, this is the best time of my life, seeing all 4 generations good in harmony. No regret returning home, meet God, late mother and husband. So these integral in a Chinese roots, I like to share a little bit of etymological analysis. The Chinese translation of integral, Yuan Yong, entrenched in the ancient Chinese culture, Buddhism and Confucianism. Yuan, round, circle, in the Buddhist terms, is about nature, water, fire, wind, covering all things. Yong, dissolving, assimilated, fully assimilated, connected. Yan Yuan Yong, these 2 words, is fullness of Buddhism in letting all things go, fully interconnected and assimilated in nature. And integral human development, Yuan Yong Sheng Ming Fa Zhan, in a Chinese translation, is a Chinese concept, implies all-rounded way of self-actualization through a sound relationship with self, others, world, and nature. is a full and harmonious fulfillment of life as individual, society, nature, integrated in personal and spiritual ways of living, transcending contradictions and conflicts. So a very famous Chinese scholar, Tu Weiming, he puts humanism in Confucianism called spiritual humanism. I interpret it as a Chinese way of integral human development, because he mentioned in the 21st century integrated vision for humanity, including self, community, nature, heaven. Spiritual humanism is a fruitful interaction of self and community, sustainable harmonious relationship between human species, nature, mutuality between human heart and way of heaven. So from this insights, intercultural dimension of integral human development, I interpret it can be applied in our aging process of becoming, experiencing connectedness in harmony, etc. Let's take a look. In the suffering and tensions in aging process, we are lost as human consumption and physical materials world because we cannot fulfill our deepest desire, longing for who we are. But the integral human development, IHD and Yuan Yong aging process can share with us how individuals resolve spiritually the tensions and conflicts in this life with self, others, world, and nature. The spiritual meaning of life and connectedness with all parts of life transcends suffering and tensions. Catholic social teaching of IHD theology is a process of becoming and experiencing all things. Integral development means a right balance among all things, synthesize parts into a meaningful whole. And a Chinese IHD interpretation of IHD, experiencing lives with fullness, achieving assimilated relationship with all in harmony. And this connectedness in harmony, in the Catholic social teaching, IHD talk about holistic relationship, restore harmony with God. And the Chinese IHD talk about full and harmonious fulfillment of life, families, others, heaven. So it's an integration in personal and spiritual living. So families, in the Chinese integral Yuan Yong, integrality comes from, or especially, family and intergenerational relationship. Like Cardinal Turkson mentioned, intergenerational solidarity echoes the Confucian teaching of intergenerational relationship. And this relationship enhances the right balance of human and becoming whole. In Western Catholic society, IHD, human grows into the likeness of God, responds to the divine calling. The Chinese cultural traditions, although not directly addressing God, but Yuan Yong concept in Confucian and Buddhist origins embedded important relationship of heaven and humanity. So this sharing of spiritual and self-transcendence is a mutuality between human heart and way of heaven, is interpretation in both Chinese and Western way. So how about a new paradigm of aging then? After looking at these three key ideas, I think there's a book called Aging to Saging, a profound new vision of growing old. I would like to say significance of this intercultural dimension, the Chinese paradigm, can help us to reveal ultimate meaning, life stories, conflicts, tensions with self, others, God, and heaven. And the empowerment from the intercultural dimension provide us the transcendence and insights to develop an integral or holistic aging in later life. And it also provides us spiritual strength to wholeness. When we transcend through spirituality, in Confucianism, we talk about spiritual humanism, Buddhism, letting go, compassion, and Christianity, connect self, reconcile the past, return and respond to the divine calling.
Christine, could you wind it up, please?
Yes.
Give others a chance.
Yeah, last two slides. So the meanings, I think if elderly in aging and later life can appreciate their own values, resolve inner conflicts, it helps the economics. Caretakers can help deal with this, and companions, family and interrelationship conflicts. So near to the new economics, the new perspective from IHD and Chinese wisdom can overcome all this suffering. So this is the end, and I hope that we can welcome to a new common home through this new perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.